This is certainly not the most difficult manual job I've had, but I gotta tell you, just because you guys will think it's hilarious, but last night, my upstairs bathroom, all the sinks stopped up. Now, I know very little about plumbing. So I started initially with pouring Drano, into the sink, which, as it turns out, did absolutely nothing except fill the sink with Drano. Right? So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to start dismantling pipes, I'm going to have Drano all over the place. So let me go to the store and see what I can find. So about 9 o'clock last night, I go out to the store and I find this gadget. And it is a CO2 compressed thing that you stick on the drain. Yeah. You guys can see where this is going. And my wife is there just to watch, too, to support me. Yeah. And so you load this thing up, and it looks like a gun, which is probably why I liked it, and you stick it down on there, and you're supposed to get it tight to the drain, and then you pull this trigger, and it blows this compressed air down. You've got to, seal up all the possible exit places, and it blows it through the drain. Well, no, it didn't work out that way at all. I pulled the trigger, and it shot, and it didn't blow the clog out, but it did blow Drano all over me, all over the bathroom, all over my wife's makeup, which that was fairly traumatic. And so then I took everything apart. So I've had about 3 hours sleep. Now that wasn't the most difficult thing that I've done, but the most probably recent challenging thing that I've done. Another quick announcement I wanted to make. Hank just said HB is having a fishing trip, or not, I'm sorry, a float trip next weekend. If any of you are interested in it, I think he's leaving Friday night, but you could join him either Friday night or Saturday morning. But if you're interested in that, meet Hank afterwards. It's just a float trip, so if you have a canoe, it's not going to be anything serious, but just kind of a casual float. See Hank afterwards, and we'll get your name down on the list, and we'll have HB contact you guys, okay? So if you want to get out and float around and have some fellowship that way, that'd be cool. Okay, so this week, I've been thinking about what actually started was I was remembering a time in my practice, in my business, where, and for those who don't know me, I'm a chiropractor, so it was probably about 2 years into my business when I realized that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing anymore. I wasn't growing, and by that I don't just mean that the business wasn't growing, but for me, I wasn't learning anything new. I kind of gotten stale, stationary. And I think when you get in those places also, at least for me, you start to question some of the decisions that you've made in the past. Maybe those weren't the best decisions. Sometimes you're even thinking, maybe I shouldn't have went to school for this, and you start to question directions that you're going in the future. And so I called my business mentor, and he kind of listened to me whine for a little bit, and then he said, "Well, you've broken the yes principle." Now he's kind of like a chiropractic prophet or something, so he speaks in these little one segment things, so you have to kind of break it down and try and figure out what it is he's talking about. But he said, I've known you for a couple of years now, and when you first started out in practice, you said yes to everything. You said yes whenever people asked you if you wanted them to be your patient. You said yes whenever people asked you if they wanted you to come talk about your profession. You said yes whenever there was a new technique or some kind of a new skill that you needed to have. You really wanted to go out and you learned that. And he said, you've stopped saying yes to people. You've stopped saying yes. He said, so if you want to change where you're at, he said, because basically what you've done is you've drawn a line in the sand and you've sat down, and that's where you're staying right now. And until you start saying yes again, that's where you're going to sit. As I've thought about that, and I've thought about at different times in my walk with God, I think the yes principle is just as true in our walk with God. I can think of times when God has made real clear with me the things that He wanted me to do in my life, whether it was forgiving someone, whether it was giving more of my time, giving more of my finances or my skills. And I, for whatever reason, came up with some excuses, and we're going to talk about the excuses, but I came up with some excuses and I didn't say yes. And I kind of sat down, just like I said, drew a line in the sand, and stopped moving forward. So what about you guys? I know for me, one of the ways that this looks like for me sometimes is my relationship with God looks like ordering off of a menu. So you've got a menu of all, the commandments and the things that I know that God wants me to do in my life, and I kind of pick and choose. It's like tonight, I think this week I'm going to have a main course of will, main course of the world, maybe a little side dish of Jesus over here. So I kind of pick and choose what I think is what I want to do at that time. Or another way to look at it, sometimes it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like a timeshare. So, 4 weeks out of the year, I'm going to say yes to Jesus. I've got a specific time. Maybe it's on Sundays when I'm at Blue Ridge, or maybe it's when I'm in environments like this and I want to look good for other people. I'll say yes to Jesus in front of other people, or find something creative to say to make it look like I'm saying yes to Jesus in front of other people. So the question I would ask you guys is, when is the last time that you can think of when God asked you to do something that made you really uncomfortable? When is the last time that God asked you to do something that you thought, I don't want to do this? When is the last time that God asked you to do something that you thought, I don't really know why God would want me to do this? And it made you uncomfortable, but you still made the decision to do it. When was the last time for you guys that happened? Was it today? Maybe for some of you, today's your first time here, and you struggled to show up here. That counts. For others of you, you've been coming here for over a year. I don't know if that counts anymore. For some of us, maybe it's been a week, maybe it's been a month, maybe it's been years. I don't think it happens overnight, but what I've seen is days become weeks, weeks become months, and months become years. And when I meet people who've been through this process for a long time, years are our legacy. Years are what define us. So that's what I would ask you. How long has it been? When was the last time that that's happened? If you haven't heard it for a while, and you haven't wrestled with that for a while, what I would ask you is, why? Why is that? Is it because you're doing everything right? That there's nothing left in your life that God is asking you to do? Or have you reached a point where you're coasting? So some of my favorite excuses.